Iowa City is a unique community. This uniqueness is shaped by the people who contribute their ideas, their energy, and their gifts to the life of Iowa City and the university. Welcome to a series of biographical interviews of special women and men who have affected this community. Their lifelong contributions have been valuable, their lives creative and full. What brought them here? Who influenced them? What changes in their field have they witnessed? What contributions are they the most pleased about? These and other questions will be explored during this series of interviews entitled, Tell Me Your Story. Irving Weber is one of Iowa City's best-known citizens. He has been called the Ice Cream Man, the Swimmer, the Iowa City Historian, and the human repository of local lore. Currently, he may be found questioning longtime Iowa Cityans, unearthing facts and stories about Iowa City at the Public Library or the State Historical Library or the University of Iowa Archives. You may have seen him at one of the many University of Iowa swim meets as a starter, which he did for 50 years. And for the past 25 years, he's rung the bell at meets to evoke enthusiasm among the swimmers. Mr. Weber is not an Irving come lately. He is a fourth-generation Iowa City resident. His great-grandparents were married here in 1839 when Iowa City was the state's capital. He attended Iowa City schools and the University of Iowa. While at the university, he was an all-American swimmer. After graduation, he went into the ice cream business and spent 43 years in sales and production of ice cream. A second vocation developed quite on a whim, the keeper and historian of local lore. And the University of Iowa Alumni Association named Irving Weber as one of its most distinguished alumni, and that was in 1987. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, Irving. And when I want to know about Iowa City, I turn to your innumerable articles and papers and in your books that we brought here. Now I'd like to have you share your beginnings and your history in Iowa City. What brought your great-grandparents here?
Well, the opportunity of the new territory, all the rich land which was available at $1.25 an acre, and they just saw a future in the area. All four of my great-grandparents were here in 1839. My paternal grandparents didn't get here till 57. They were late comers. And my grandfather had learned the two trades in Germany. He was a wheelwright and a blacksmith horseshoer. Those were two trades very much in demand on the frontier, and so he got a job with the Stagecoach Company. And the Stagecoach Company was located down on Iowa Avenue, between Iowa Avenue and Jefferson, between Johnson Street and Dodge Street. That whole block was occupied by the Stagecoach Company. And it was quite an activity, quite an enterprise. They built the stagecoaches there. They made the harness. They had 136 horses they shod, because as these stagecoaches went in all directions, they had to have lots of extra horses. So that's what brought my grandparents to this area. We never had enough money to leave town, so I'm still here.
You're still here. What was Iowa City like for you growing up? As a boy, recreation, schools?
Well, of course, we made most of our recreation ourselves in those times. My father was real good at making things for all the boys in the neighborhood. He made the skis. We had homemade skis. He made them for all the boys in the neighborhood, and I had sleds, and I had a great big bobsled that would hold 12, well-built, and
where did you sled? What hills did you choose?
Well, the one that we used more frequently was Governor Street from Washington Street to Iowa Avenue, and we'd go clear on up to Jefferson. Now, I remember there was not much traffic then, but as we came down the hill, we'd call out, track for the city hack. Now, I don't know why we yelled that, but that's what we yelled. But there was no car, there were no cars, and just an occasional horse and buggy, and so there was really no danger.
Did you ice skate?
Oh, yes, on the Iowa River, and also on Ralston Creek, which was right close. I remember many times skating from Iowa City up to Coralville and back.
On the river?
On the river. Yeah, in those days, the river froze solidly. Today, because of the dam up at Lake McBride, it doesn't freeze solidly. They're always releasing water, and it never gets solid like it did in those
Too dangerous.
days. But skating on the river was really great fun. Of course, I spent most of my youth either swimming, skating, or canoeing on the river.
So that's where your swimming came from. What school did you go to? What grade school?
It was the 4th ward. Now, all the schools were named wards. Wasn't that a terrible name for a school?
4th
now
ward.
we call them Mark Twain or Longfellow or Grant Wood. But then they were the 1st ward, 2nd ward, 3rd ward, and 4th ward. I went to the 4th ward, which was on the corner of Dodge and Court Street, the southwest corner. There's just a house there today. And we had good teachers, and it was a nice school. Very little playground around the school, but there was a place across the street and down a half a block where there was lots of space, no houses. We called it the Woods. We even had a football field in there. So, but we did make our own fun in those days. The high school that I graduated in 1918, was built in 1903. And my mother went to a high school in the same block years before that one was constructed. So there were high schools here very, very early. I wrote a story about all the high schools all the schools that had been started, mostly private to begin with, in Iowa City, and you'd be amazed how many there were. These pioneers seemed to have a great appreciation of the value of an education.
You went on from Iowa City on to the university.
Right.
And one of the things that you are known for, you were a swimmer on the team, and then you were an All-American swimmer.
Well, there's a new sport that doesn't mean so much to be an All-American then. Today it's a little more.
I made the mistake of asking you about swimming trunks. You wore a very wonderful top and bottom. That's what the swimming team wore.
It was a swimming suit, not swimming trunks. No, we wouldn't have been allowed to compete in trunks in those days.
And Irving, what was your stroke?
Backstroke. I swam a lot of freestyle though, but I was better at the backstroke.
Better, and you still continue to swim?
Yes, regularly. I think that's been a big factor in keeping me healthy and active, because I do swim with regularity. Coach Patton has a locker for me in with the team, and so I keep my sights high and swim maybe a little faster because I'm in with those real All-Americans, Olympic swimmers, some of them.
Now this bell is something that you've that's your trademark for the swim meets, isn't it?
That's right. In 1964, Martha and I went to the Olympic Games. In fact, we've gone to them 3 times. We went to the Olympic Games in Tokyo, and before the swimming meet started each time, one of the Japanese officials, walked up and down the deck of the pool ringing a bell. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. It alerts everybody that the meet's about to start. I thought, well, if it's good enough for the Olympic Games, it's good enough for Iowa City and the University of Iowa. So when I got back, I got a school bell, and I've been ringing it before every meet, and the boys get steamed up, and even competitors like it. And the coach always, when he comes back, always says, have you still got your bell? And I ring it in parades. I don't know, it's just got to be a kind of a hobby with me.
Let's talk about your next career in Iowa City after graduation, the ice cream business.
Well, I started in the ice cream business when I graduated from high school. I worked 4 summers at the Sidwell Milk and Ice Cream Company.
Where was that located?
It was where the Lindquist Measurement Center is today. It's on the hillside on College Street. We had a quarter of a block in there, and I worked there the 4 summers, and then after I graduated, then I started working there and gradually stayed with it and became part of the firm. So that's how I got into the, you say I drifted into the ice cream business.
And stayed for 43 years.
Yes, I stayed all right. I still have a connection with the Quality Check Group.
Now, how did that get started? And then I
Well-
want to go back to the ice cream business at Sidwell's.
Well, during World War II, we realized that those of us in the ice cream business, the independent companies, we were competing with the chain companies. They were fine companies, but they had facilities that we didn't have. So I felt we should get started with a program where we banded together, and that's what we did. There were 5 of us that started, and we all chipped in. I think it was $2,500 to hire a Chicago agency to get us a good program, and then we invited 21 others to come in and look at it, and they all joined, and so Quality Check was established, and it has grown, and today there are members all over the United States and Canada, and the sales of the organization now are $2,500,000,000. So it has really been a success. It's a cooperative. It isn't anything anybody made any money on, but it's been a great experience, and I still go to the meetings. I just got back from the Canadian Rockies.
And one thing that was a very lovely honor, Quality Check named their over $4 million new building in Naperville, Illinois, the Weber Zimmerman Building, in honor of your long and loyal commitment to the company.
Yes, well, I was quite pleasing to me that they recognized me that way, and so I still keep in touch with it. And I do remember many things that happened years ago, and once in a while someone comes up with what they think is a brilliant idea, and maybe I can remember that the thing didn't work 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So they keep me on the board honorarily for that reason.
Let's get back to Sidwell's Ice Cream. Did they only make ice cream, or did they
We
also...
were in the milk and ice cream
Milk
business
and ice cream. And how did
originally.
you deliver it then? And how did you keep it?
Boy, that's really nobody realizes what a job it was years ago. All of the ice cream, there was no electric refrigeration in the homes, and there were soda fountains, and some of the grocery stores sold ice cream. We delivered it in 5-gallon metal tubs. We packed it with ice and salt. At the soda fountains, I remember Whetstones sold a great deal of ice cream, and every morning I would go up there. That's when I started in 1918, and put new fresh cans of ice cream in and pack it with ice and salt, and then in the afternoon we had to come back and repack it. The grocery stores had wooden cabinets, but we had to pack those with ice and salt, and first we had to drain the salt water out. It was a primitive system, and take it out in the street and dump it. Sometimes it was dirt streets, and it always was a kind of a mess. But that was the only way people had of getting ice cream. It was good ice cream, though. It really was.
What was the secret?
The ingredients. If you put the ingredients in, you're going to have a good tasting ice cream. And of course, today the law is only 10%, but in those days the law was 12%. And at times we made some special ice creams. We call it extra fine, which was 16% butterfat. Now, those rich, good things today are frowned on by the dietitians, but
Made the best ice cream.
they were good. They were good, and sure we have better freezers today, continuous freezers that make a smoother ice cream, but no matter what the freezer is, if you don't put the ingredients in, it's not going to taste good.
Where did you get the ice for all this packing in 1918?
Well,
where'd you buy your ice?
there was an Ingrid ice company. They had 3 large ice houses along Taft Speedway. You know, that's just off of Dubuque Street going to the west. And in the winter, they would cut the ice on the river. They would elevate it by machinery up into the top of the ice house, covered with sawdust. And then during the year, they would uncover it and deliver the ice. Now, I helped make ice up there. That was one job I never particularly liked. We were out on that ice. It was cold. Our mittens were always getting wet, and but I'm so happy I had the experience, because people today don't realize. And that ice out of the river, people put it in drinks. So I don't know why they didn't get some horrible disease. I guess they had developed an immunity to it. But that's where we got the ice, and of course we had the machines to crush it, crack it, and I'd spend the whole day packing ice cream cabinets around town.
What did you use to deliver your ice cream?
Well, we had at that time we had trucks. To begin with, they used horse and wagons.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, we used horse and wagons to deliver milk at that time when I was there, because the horse knew the route, and the man could just run up and deliver it, and the horse knew about how long to wait before he moved on. But in packing the ice cream, we used a Model T Ford truck, and the ice was in 30-pound buckets, wooden buckets, and we'd load the truck with buckets and start out, and then I'd have to come back and get more ice and more rock salt. I don't know how people put up with selling it at those days, because it was so primitive.
But people love ice cream, don't
That's
they?
right, and it was great ice cream. It really was.
Sidwell's. Who
Right.
was Sidwell?
Well, the company was started by B.D. Sidwell up at a town called Whittier, north of Cedar Rapids, a Quaker town. And he came down here in 1908, and his son went into the business, around 1912 or so, and then it was 1918 when I started there. So it was a family business to start with.
I want to know, Irving, after 43 years making, delivering ice cream, you must have a favorite flavor.
Oh, toasted almond fudge. We invented that name here, too.
You did?
Yeah, and a lot of it's used by many companies today. Well, we had it, and we brought it into Quality Check, and then others copied it from Quality Check. And the chocolate ice cream has the additional 2 to 3% of cocoa in it, and that has cocoa butter in it, and that just makes a richer ice cream than vanilla with the same basic formula. So, oh yeah, that's still my favorite.
Let's move on to your next career, your writing. What got you started, and what do you decide to write about some special
Well,
area?
originally, I had a friend, Al Loomis, who was in one of the 4 others there were 5 of us who got Quality Check started. And he liked to take pictures, and I did too, and we were always bringing our cameras when we'd go on a trip at some unusual place, and he got to taking pictures of the upper parts of buildings in Fort Dodge, and then the newspaper would write clues. And he said, why don't you do that in Iowa City? You know the town down there for longer than most anybody. So I went to Mr. Eganton, and he said, well, sounds like a good idea, but you're going to have to write the clues. And I said, well, that's fine. I want to do that. So I started out with taking pictures of the upper parts of the building. Old Capitol was the first one. And then I put the clues. Of course, people guessed what they were pretty well, but sometimes they'd be a little puzzled. And I did 20 of them. I thought, well, that'll probably be all I can do. And then Mr. Eganton said, well, why don't you do some more? And so I did another 20, and then I drifted into more of a system of writing about the building rather than just the upper portions. To begin with, we call these series Look Up. People would look up at the top of the buildings and then guess. And then later we changed as how is your history IQ? And then I got to writing about the different buildings, the famous old homes, things of historical interest in Iowa City. And I didn't have any idea that I do more than 40 of them, but that was 17 years ago that I started, January 22nd, 1973, how well I remember. And last night I just finished number 739 in those 17 years. Some are better than others, no question, but I gradually got the idea of what people are interested in.
You have a remarkable memory.
Well, that's about the only thing I can lay any claim to is I'm an old man with a good memory, and I don't forget things. I don't know why, I just remember the silliest things that happened 75, 80 years ago. I remember we turned the electricity on in our house for the first time on my 8th birthday, 1908. And that was a big event when we turned electricity on, because before that we'd been using kerosene lamps. And they weren't bad lamps, really. Really, they weren't.
Did just parts of Iowa City get electricity in 1908, or were you one of the lucky ones?
No. Electricity came to Iowa City in 1886. They were, to begin with, it was just for arc street lights. And then the businesses downtown started using electricity instead of gas, and then they started putting it in houses. No, we were not one of the first to get it, but we were far the top half to get electricity. You see, gas came first in Iowa City, 1857, 30 years before we got electricity. And there was manufactured gas down on the corner of Burlington and Van Buren, and they used that first for street lamps. A man had to go around every morning and climb a ladder and open the little door, turn on the jet, light the flame, close it, and then the next morning he had to go back and turn it off. So that was the first street lighting in Iowa City. Houses then were lighted with gas too.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've been called, all of this writing for the newspaper have now become a book. I mean, not only one book, I'm looking at 5 volumes. That was published, these have been published by the Iowa City Lions Club.
Right.
And they call you the Lion's Jewel because...
I didn't know I was called that.
I read that in a newspaper article.
Well, I love that.
How did this project get going?
Well, the Lions, one of the Lions said, we ought to put those articles in book form. I think Gus Pusateri, who's now gone, but he was a Lion, I think he was the one that said to the club, we ought to publish those in book form and sell them. And gee, I was nervous when they started out. I thought, gee, they're spending all this money for 3,000 of this volume, and you can see I was a little younger when I started those.
Not much.
They published these, and they did invest. They gambled a lot of money, and I remember the president of the club kept saying to me, keep writing, because we got to sell those books.
And they've been selling wonderfully well.
This has been reprinted twice, 3,000 the first time, I forget how many the other two, and all of them been reprinted at least once, except the one that just came out, Volume 5.
Are you working on something now? What are you working on now?
Well, the series this year, the sesquicentennial year, is I take my text from Genesis 1, in the beginning. So in the beginning, Iowa City had no paved streets. And then I tell the story. In the beginning, Iowa City had no automobiles. And then I tell the story. And so the Lions Club right now are putting those together. They're setting it up so that if they want to put out Volume 6, they won't have any problem getting everything together. The problem is in the past has been we decide to put out a book and then we can't find some of the pictures that we want. And I have to scramble around, so now we're borrowing the pictures which belong to the Press Citizen. They're the ones that permit me to take all those pictures out for this particular purpose. So they are getting ready for a 6th volume, and if they think it's feasible to put out a 6th volume, they will.
And the proceeds go to?
They make all the money. That's the story of my life.
Well, that's very generous and wonderful.
I'm so happy to get them published, because this way they're in permanent form. A lot of people saved all these copies, but when you save 700 of them, they get yellowed and tattered and torn. But once they're in book form, but actually there are only 300 of the articles that I've written in these 5 volumes. And I've written 739. So there are plenty more to put in book form if they want to.
Well, you received a top honor from the National Historical Society for this writing, correct?
Well, yes, that's right.
The American Association of State and Local History awarded you a certificate of commendation for excellence in furthering public understanding of history in Iowa City.
I believe maybe that's correct. I can't just exactly remember the wording. But I was pleased that they did recognize the book. It's been a joy to record this history. I've talked to so many people, many that, who are gone. The one I remember in particular was Will Goodwin. He was 99 and a half when he died a couple of years ago, and I just was constantly calling because he could.
He had a
take
good
back.
memory like you, too.
Yeah, he did. And I still remember his phone number, 351-9098. See, that's that terrible memory I have. But I was always calling him for information, and once in a while he'd give me an idea. He said, well, why don't you write a story about the saloons back in early Iowa City? So I wrote about the saloons in early Iowa City.
Quickly, who are the other sources that you're using also of longtime Iowa Cityans?
Mrs. Roland Smith was born and raised here. She remembers much of the early part of University Heights. She was born there on what is now called Melrose Avenue. It was then called Poor Farm Road. And I kid her and I said, you never got very far from the Poor Farm Road, did you? They live close to it now.
What
Me
a
and Roland
terrible
laughed
name.
about that.
Well, you'll be 89 years young this December.
The Lord willing.
Lord willing, what is your secret for remaining so vital?
Well, I swim regularly at the field house. Coach Patton, maybe I mentioned this. I have a locker in with the team, and I get in. I swim with the team. They always make room for me. It's an awful job getting a lane nowadays because everybody wants to swim for exercise, and so I'm fortunate to be able to go and get in whenever I want to, and it's great. Now the Mercer Park pool is a marvelous pool, but that's 3 miles from home. The field house is a block and a half, and and that's where I swam. That's where my son was a swimmer also, a backstroker, and he swam there. So we both had the same swimming coach, Dave Armbruster.
And also your curiosity and wanting to know keeps you vital and busy.
Yes, I have maybe you call it a bad habit. People start talking to me, and pretty soon I'm asking, when did you come to Iowa City? What brought you here? I'm always asking these questions. They don't mind, but I sometimes do have to apologize because I feel like I'm the prosecuting attorney.
You just want to unearth these
Extracting.
wonderful facts for all of us. Irving, it's been a true pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for being my guest.
My pleasure. I hope I didn't talk too long.
You did not. My guest today telling his story has been Irving Weber, 4th generation Iowa Cityan, businessman, all-American swimmer, Iowa City historian, and archivist. Because of his curiosity, his knowledge, his hard work, and love of Iowa City, we as a community are more aware of our heritage and enriched by his living here. He is a man who has truly made a difference, a jewel of a man, and we thank him.